This morning inside your spotlight, we have the president of TTUTA, Mr. Martin Lumpkin. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, sir, and good morning to Trinidad and Tobago.
How are you doing this morning?
I am fine, thanks, considering the situation we have in the education system.
Well, thank you for waking up this morning to come and chat a little bit about it.
Yes.
I understand that there are a bunch of schools that currently have teachers on strike.
It's not strike.
It's not strike.
It's not strike.
What is it?
It is a refusal to work.
What is the difference?
Striking is one, and we are not allowed to strike because we are part of the essential services.
Right.
And by such, we cannot strike.
But
right?
you can refuse to work.
We can refuse to work under the OSH Act. And it is enshrined in the OSH Act that every worker has the right, if their health and safety is threatened, that they can do a refusal to work. So the refusal to work is in terms of an individual basis. So every person who is threatened by health and safety can implement that refusal to work.
All right, so what schools are currently affected by that refusal to work?
We have at this time Aranguez North Secondary going into this is the third week of their refusal to work. And we also have Presal Secondary School. Mount Hope Secondary has had a refusal to work, but works are taking place. Now, I must say that when the workers engage in a refusal to work, they don't stay away from the school. They report for duty, and once a safe area has been designated, agreed to by the administration and the persons affected, then they report for duty, but they go to that place of work, safety, right? If they're in Presal, there were two areas that were designated as safe areas, one being the staff room and one being the hall. When the OSH inspector came, she determined that the hall was not a safe place because ceiling tiles were being dislodged and can cause a safety hazard. They go into this staff room, but 3 out of the 4 air-conditioned units are not working in the staff room.
Right.
They cannot open the windows because it's been shut, and because it's been closed so long, they cannot open it. And there are areas of the windows that, when it rains, they get wet inside there as well.
Even though it's been shut for so long?
Even though it's been
still
shut
have
for long.
leaks?
Yes.
All right, so that's Presal.
That's Presal.
And what about Aranguez North Secondary?
Aranguez North Secondary. It's not a new issue in terms of health and safety. For about 4 years ago, there's an electrical cable that leads to Block E. Now, Aranguez North Secondary was one of the junior secondary schools, former junior secondary schools, that were rebuilt around 2009. And we still have a number of them incomplete at this time. But
Is that one of them? That's incomplete?
It's completed.
Okay.
But we can question the nature of
the quality of the work?
Completion.
Okay.
Right? One of the things they are challenged with, which I will get back to, but at the entrance of the old school, there are no security guards. All are placed at the present entrance. So they don't have the complement that will allow for security to be throughout the compound, throughout the day, throughout the night.
Okay.
So vandals, thieves came and they cut and stole the electrical cable leading to Block E. Now, Block E houses the labs, some of the IA, and so on. Sorry. So for 4 years, they have been without that. The building was served a prohibition notice by the OSH inspectors.
When did that happen?
The OSH inspectors visited 3 times this year.
Okay.
April, October, and quite recently with the refusal to work.
Right.
Right. Now, the ministry has been lamenting in terms of budgetary allocations to replace it. They would have informed us it costs over $1 million
To replace the electrical wire?
that cable, because the cable comes from a kiosk and goes underground into the Block E. And because of the amount of electrical that they use, equipment and so, it has to be of a certain standard. Right? So they said it's going to cost that.
So the thieves went underground and take the wire?
No, they went into the kiosk, cut, and they started to pull.
From the,
They went into the building, cut at another point, and started to pull.
Okay.
Now, if you don't have guards there, right? There's no one monitoring. It was quite easy for them to do that.
Okay.
Right? So,
and you said that happened 4 years ago.
4 years ago. And the students are being denied certain subject areas when it comes to that. And because of that, the school is quite challenged in having some of these subjects continue. They are challenged, and I have seen classes on the corridor being taking place because of the challenge they have. Now, there were also some areas that were deemed unsafe, about 58 classes, I think. I stand to be corrected.
58 classrooms were deemed unsafe.
Yeah.
How many classrooms are there in this school?
They're roughly probably about 100. It's a big compound.
So a little bit over half of the classes in the school are not usable.
Yeah, right. There are instances when it rains, the roof and the ceiling leaks, and there have been presence of mold-like substances. Right. When it was built, and a number of these schools, an HVAC air conditioning system was installed, water-cooled. It never worked properly. So the ministry installed 150 air-conditioned units, which have not been serviced on a regular basis. And so members of staff and some students have been having health challenges because of that. Now, we are of the opinion that air quality testing should be done on a regular basis if you are not servicing these air-conditioned units, especially when persons on the compound are coming down with health challenges. Right? So we are calling on air quality testing to be done throughout the school.
So for the past 4 years, since first this electrical wire thing happened, and since then we've been having various challenges with the school, and the teachers have continued working throughout these challenges. So what was the straw that broke the camel's back, that made them say, you know what, we're done, we can't do this anymore?
It would have been last term when some of the challenges were not being addressed. The school administration would have addressed some of these situations based on their budgetary allocations as well too. Right? So they were coping with the air conditioned units not being serviced, and with the heater, especially that high heat over the last few months. But then when the members of staff started to show signs of health issues, and they went to the doctor, and the doctor would have given them certain relation to air quality, prognosis on those bases.
So they find mold in their lungs and things like that?
No, not that. But in terms of they had breathing problems and so on, and they would probably have to do further tests to see if that is the case. However, because of that challenge of the air quality, and I have to say as well, the cafeteria was shut down. One of the sewer lines passes under the cafeteria, and there was seepage from that line onto the cafeteria. So they had to shut down that as well too. So all of that are challenges that they are facing.
All right. Who's responsible for maintaining the school?
Basically, Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education will rely on the administration, principal, vice principal, and so on, to say to the ministry or send in what they call tickets. So there is a school infrastructural management system. It's a computer-based system where you would, from your school, go onto the system and generate infrastructural issues.
Right, so tell them what's wrong.
Yeah. You get a ticket.
Right.
So generally throughout Trinidad and Tobago, our principals have been doing that. And it is now up to the Ministry of Education to attend to these tickets. We have instances where I can say personally, when just after COVID, when we were dealing with SEA, and you would send in your infrastructural issues, I sent in, that was 2020. 21 passed, the ticket was still active. 22 passed, it was still active. It was still on the system, never addressed.
To this day?
Well, I don't know at this time because I'm not at the school. But when I left in 2022, it was never addressed. And we're having instances as such. Now, let me tell you as well, permit me, at Mount Hope Secondary, they will have had if officials of EFPPD, that's the unit within the Ministry of Education that goes and does the evaluation,
right.
Will generate scope of works. The EFPPD official from Mount Hope visited on a number of occasions, and she would have relayed to the staff, the PTA, and all who are associated with school. She generated reports, escalated it as being one that is essential and needs to be attended to. But when it goes up the chain of command, it's being shut down because it's deemed as not as critical as one would want it to be, or it wouldn't shut down the school. And that has been happening to a number of schools because of the nature of our educators. They don't like schools to be shut down. They don't like children to be out of school. So they generally will fight up with what they have until
they can't anymore.
Yeah,
so what happens to the students now? I mean, you said that this is the third week Aranguez North Secondary is going on refusal to work.
Yes.
I mean, not say strike, right?
Yes.
Refusal to work.
Refusal.
This is the third week now. So all those classes that should have been happening, not happening. All the students are supposed to be preparing for CSEC next year.
Yes.
They're not doing any of that preparation.
Yes.
And this is, like you said, this is one of those schools that was a junior sec that is now, because we have all secondary schools across the board, they now have been elevated to a secondary school. But if we have this level of absenteeism on the teachers and the students, like no work happening,
yes.
essentially, then how are we moving forward as a nation? How do we... what are we doing?
Yeah, that's a great question that should be on the minds of the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and the Ministry of Education. Again, we are saying our educators, we want to teach, we want to educate our children. However, we must be given a basic environment. They must be conducive to education. And if it challenges your health and safety, then at some point in time, you have to preserve your health and safety as well. And you are doing it not to just preserve your own, but the children as well. Because the teaching conditions of our teachers are the learning conditions of our students. So it will affect them as well. So the educators must take a stance. And this is part of education, to show the children that at some point in time, you have to stand up for your rights. You cannot be taken advantage of all the time. And in these cases, and I must reiterate the point, our educators have been bending backwards. And not only on this issue, a number of issues. You have schools raising funds when they are not being given the funds that they need in order to carry out some of the projects that the Ministry of Education is bearing down on them as well. So when you have sports day, when you have field trips, those things don't come free.
Of course.
They have to. And when you have a student or students who cannot afford, how can you sit there and just watch these students not being able to participate because of a lack of funding? And hence the reason schools will raise funds in order to bridge that gap for their students. Because yes, we want children to experience the joys of learning. Schooling should be happy days. Yeah, and you can recall probably your days in schooling. They had their ups and downs, but generally, school days were happy days. Now, I don't think that our students are experiencing that as much. And it's all because of a lack of funding. We need to, as a government, and I appreciate in the budget that the Honorable Minister of Finance would have said that they are going to seek funding for infrastructural works. But there are other areas as well too. And we look forward to that. However, while we are waiting, the educators, the students are suffering in our schools. And we need to address it as quickly as possible.
Mr. Lumpkin, thank you so much for joining us this morning and for sharing this information, because I think it's very important that the public gets an understanding as to why. Because I can tell you, for one, when I read the article in the first instance, I was extremely concerned for the students, of course for the teachers, but more so for the students, because like this is the future we're talking about. And if it is that they don't have that opportunity to learn because of this situation in the school, infrastructurally speaking, then what does the future look like?
Yeah,
it's a little bit scary.
Yeah, if you permit me as well, some of the schools that are greatly affected are the ones that should be operational because the community, the children they needed for that advantage, competitive advantage out there. And these are the schools that are lamenting. And I also have to say, once conditions go back to some level of normalcy, our educators will bridge that gap. They will work hard to ensure that these students, but now, as I said, CSEC, SBAs and so on, these things need to
start happening. Let me say thank you very much for joining us again. Now, I love that you mentioned the community. We don't have time to talk about it in full because the community is also part of the problem. If it is that vandals coming into the school and stealing, then they're not helping the situation either to make it any better. But that's a different conversation altogether. I thank you so much again, Mr. Lumpkin. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. Ladies and gentlemen, we take a quick break and we come back with more in our morning show. Stick around.
You gotta have your certificate to